A devastating tsunami in Japan has forced a 10-metre-high wall of water inland, flooding towns, crushing buildings and cars in its wake. Japanese police say 200 to 300 bodies have been found so far on the beach. It was caused by an 8.9 magnitude earthquake off the northeast coast of the country, close to the city of Sendai. The damage is extensive. Thousands of homes are without electricity and hundreds of people are still missing. Now let's have a look at some of the pictures from the Japanese state broadcaster NHK. You can see the extraordinary scenes of the wave as it surges inland and it takes everything with it. You can see that along with the water and the debris coming into view. Now amongst all that destruction, fires there. They're burning amidst the massive debris being pushed inland. Now bear in mind the wave hitting the coast was around 10 metres high at the point of impact. The wave hit the city of Sendai, where the waters having receded. As you can see in these pictures, there is a hint of the aftermath of a tsunami. That, of course, understanding the extent of damage to the population, their homes, businesses, the infrastructure, is something we have yet to find out. And, of course, at the moment, Japan is beginning to wake up now to the scenes of devastation that have been caused. There are estimates of the numbers missing around Sendai at the moment, but it is at present really impossible to know just how many may have been killed and how many are missing.
So large swathes of the northeast of Japan have literally been swept away by the tsunami's giant waves. Thousands and thousands of homes are gone, and all the while the death toll continues to rise. There's more coverage of the disaster throughout the evening on the BBC News Channel, but for now we'll leave you with some of the extraordinary images from today.
And it looks like the tsunami has engulfed several cities as the tsunami has struck the area, obviously engulfing farms.
大分県豊後水道以南、宮崎県、鹿児島県東部。
車、完全に流されてます。
You're seeing a fire that is completely raging out of control. This oil refinery up in blaze. You see someone inside that building waving a white towel, seeking help.
Well, here in Indonesia, you only have to mention the word tsunami and people immediately think back to what happened in 2004, that huge Asian tsunami which devastated the province of Aceh here, killing about 170,000 people. But this time it seems that Indonesia has been spared the brunt of what's happened in Japan. There were some tsunami waves which hit the northeast of the country, but they were relatively small, only about half a metre high, and caused no damage. But some people still decided to spend several hours up in the mountains waiting it out. And that's probably because after what happened in Aceh, people are far more educated about what tsunamis are and what to do when one happens. And the government has also put in place a tsunami warning system which covers at least part of the country. And next week there was due to be a big international tsunami drill here in Indonesia, co-hosted with Japan. The scenario was an earthquake which triggered a tsunami that fanned out across the region. For many people here, since what's happened in Japan, it's a scenario which must seem frighteningly real.
Well, I'm in Kauai, which is a small island west of the big island, and we were evacuated. We're on the south shore of Kauai in a resort in a town called Poipu, right on the coastline, and we were evacuated and told to go to higher ground. So we're about 10 miles now inland and north of Poipu. Warnings have been given, and we've sort of passed the time when the first impact was scheduled to potentially arrive. And we're sort of waiting to see if indeed a further wave might come in. And meanwhile, the roads are closed. We're in a community college about 10 miles north of the shoreline, and just sort of waiting and watching.
The effects were not expected to be particularly dramatic here, and they seem to have passed largely without incident. The emergency management officials here say that in some of their detectors, they barely registered a blip. Still, people were told to keep away from beaches. They were told that the waves here could be of a size that might, for example, knock you off your feet or damage boats in harbors and so on. So it was that sort of a warning. But tsunamis are taken seriously along the coast here, particularly, and as you may well know, the British Columbia coast is dotted with some very small and quite remote communities. So getting word to some of them is sometimes has been a cause for concern. So emergency plans kicked into effect. Sirens went off. Some people spent nights in school gymnasiums at higher levels just to be on the safe side. Because really the fault line runs just off the coast here, and a major earthquake is always a possibility here, and people want to be sure that they never take these sorts of things too lightly.
Particularly around the Santa Cruz Bay area, that's sort of like San Francisco Bay area, if you like. We're seeing boats tossed around the harbour there. The waves there are around 3 feet high coming in, so not a huge amount of damage expected there. Further north than that, in Oregon, in the state of Oregon, where there are tsunami warnings, there have been evacuations along the coast. In fact, overnight, people were receiving what are called reverse 911 calls, when emergency services phone people to tell them they need to evacuate, and also sirens were sounding to get people out of their houses, and evacuation centres have been set up there. Again, it's in line with what we're expecting, which is low-level flooding in those areas, 3 feet perhaps. Further south in the Los Angeles basin area here, we are on a tsunami advisory, which means that they're not expecting strong flooding. We are expecting higher swells than usual. In fact, some surfers have taken this as an opportunity to go out and catch more waves, although they have been advised to stay out of the water and off the beaches.
That last report from Roger Smachandani in Los Angeles.
The earthquake is the biggest in Japan since records began. It triggered 10-metre-high waves, which swept everything out before them. Our correspondent Chris Hogg is in Osaka, and he reports on the really terrifying moment the quake struck.
When the shaking begins, everyone in Japan knows what to do.
Jesus Christ.
But no drills can really prepare you for this. The longer it lasts, the worse it is. Tremors are commonplace here, but this one, the big one, people have feared for years. The shaking stops, but they're still in shock. This family films it. First, they wait. How bad is it going to be? A few seconds, then they make a decision. Everyone out. The alarms warn a tsunami is on the way. Now, nowhere feels safe. The threat of a major quake was always very real here. And now they're doing what they can to keep themselves safe, stocking up on emergency supplies and taking shelter. Many are stuck, hours away from home, but relieved, no doubt, that for them the situation isn't graver. Chris Hogg, BBC News in central Japan.
Well, earlier Maxime Morwini spoke to our correspondent Damien Grammaticus. He's in Sendai, which is close, of course, to the epicentre of the earthquake.
Well, I've just got here not too long ago, and we've made our way down to near the seafront where the tsunami swept in, and it's quite astonishing, the devastation here. As we drove down, we saw shipping containers that had been swept hundreds of meters inland, smashed against buildings. There's trees uprooted, debris everywhere, and dozens and dozens, hundreds of cars that had just been tumbled over, smashed and crushed. Also articulated lorries picked up, dumped in a ditch, one next to me, one in front of me. Just down the road here has had the front smashed in too. And way down in the distance, well, there are fires burning nearer to the seafront, a flare just going off now down there.
And Damien, what of people? Have you seen any survivors, people trying to get away from the area?
Well, in this area, there are people who are sheltering in their houses. They are sitting there by candlelight. In the city, the actual sort of city centre of Sendai, further back, that has been pretty much unscathed. But back there, the problem you find as we came in, there's little electricity, there's almost no water, there's no gas, so the city is almost dark, there's just light in places, and people are finding, I think, things very, very difficult. On the way here too, many, many shops closed, supermarkets closed, petrol stations closed, and in this area where I am, they say many, many people died from the tsunami, and there are many who are still looking for those family members they've lost.
Damien Grammaticus.
Now, the events in Japan are being reported across the world. The images have been both astonishing and appalling. There have been some harrowing stories from those who lived through the earthquake. Here are some of the voices from Japan after today's events.
The closest experience I could use to describe it is trying to stand on a skateboard. It literally felt as though the ground was being yanked out from under our feet like a rug. Most earthquakes in Tokyo are a quick shudder, but this one went on for well over a minute, and it was impossible even to stay on your feet.
Just started feeling tremors quite gradual at first, but just built and built and built. It went on for about 5 or 10 minutes. I was under the table. Really scary. I've experienced lots of quakes here before, but nothing like this. The wife of one of my co-workers, she still can't get in contact with her family that are living in Sendai. People are quite worried, quite scared.
The building was swayed many times, and the ceiling were damaged, and there are fires and scattered, or we couldn't stand up, so we hid under the decks. So it was horrible.
I know when the quake first hit, people ran to the middle of the road, and I thought some people were going to get run down by cars just because they were so panicked. Everybody who was panicked on the street, I think even though they've all experienced quakes before, they felt this could be the big one. This was very different for us to feel.
The most striking thing about this earthquake was the length of time that the swaying continued for. In Niigata, we had relatively little damage. But seeing this, it's blown my mind. It's terrifying.
We were all under the table kind of holding hands, waiting it out. I wasn't really thinking about anything other than kind of surviving, because there was this very real sense of panic and confusion.
Remember, get your headlines online with our 1-minute news summary. Watch the news unfold. bbc.com/news.